everybody. Welcome to the Art Workshop. I'm Christopher Epling. We appreciate you so much tuning in today here on Pike TV for another fun episode where we learn about art, application, and process. We're really excited because this is the 51st episode. So that means that we've just completed a huge run of the Art Workshop here on Pike TV, and it's been so fun and so rewarding to be able to participate like this. You're the most important aspect of the show, though, the viewer. We appreciate you so much, and to show our appreciation, we actually produced a really fun show recently, a commemorative Bob Ross special, and yes, I wore a wig for this, so I haven't watched it. I probably won't because I'm super nervous and embarrassed maybe about how it looked, but if you want to check it out, it's there and available. Just go to the Pike TV's YouTube channel. You can find it real easy. Just search for Pike TV and in YouTube, and you'll see a huge list of all the wonderful programming that Pike TV offers, and a little tiny part of that, though, is the Bob Ross special. It ran for about an hour. We painted together. We did a painting, and it turned out okay, I think. I'm nervous about the wig. I can't help it. It just keeps going back to that. But anyway, we're really super excited and proud to be able to produce a show here for you. And we actually had a question to come in. This was something really interesting. Had a question to come in from a viewer. And the question is from Kevin Ratliff. He's from Dorton, and he wanted to know, how do you paint feathers with watercolor? Now that's a really, really good question. How do you paint feathers in watercolor? And when I received that question, I thought to myself, well, that's got to be an episode now, because if you, the viewer, want to know something, and we're going to try to show you and do a show on it. So if you have any questions like that, you can email those to me, and we'd love to be able to delve into whatever idea or concept you have in mind. You want to know how to do charcoal skeletons? We'll do charcoal skeletons. You want to know how to do maybe multicolored unicorns? We'll do multicolored unicorns together. But you have to send the question to me before we can do that. And you can do that really easy by sending it to my email address, eplingillustrations@gmail.com. Send that to me, and we'll put your name up here on the show, and we'll try to figure out what your question is. So Kevin's question is about feathers and watercolor. So watercolor is one of my favorite mediums. We've done a few episodes with watercolor now. Watercolor is so easy and it's so accessible. You can go to any big box store. You can find it anywhere you look. Watercolor is anywhere. Even like the dollar type stores where there's watercolor. There's watercolor there. So you could get watercolor, okay? So that's what we're going to focus on today, is watercolor. We're going to talk about process because process is important. This show is about having fun. It's about you, the viewer, at home drawing along with me, having a good time, learning about art, making something cool. And if you do make something cool, and if you have a question too, you can send that to me. We'd love to show your artwork here on the show. You can also send your artwork to me at eplingillustrations@gmail.com. All right, so let's talk about process first. Process is important. Now, as a children's book illustrator, process is everything. It's about planning. A lot of people sometimes when they see a finished book and they're holding it in their hands and they say, well, this is nice and everything, but how does someone go about creating something like that? Well, as an illustrator, you have to know a lot of different types of techniques and a lot of different approaches, because you're taking a written story and turning that into art. How do you do that? You have to interpret what the author's vision is for the book. Now imagine that. Imagine someone sending you a story typed out, and your goal is you read that story and you have to put pictures to those words. You have to determine what part of the story is most important. You want to illustrate and highlight that. Illustrations almost act like a soundtrack, if you will, to a movie. They only accompany the story to make it, enhance it, or not better, but just to add more to it. So let's look a little bit about process today before we jump into watercolor. And I brought something to share with you. Now this is a story that I'm working on right now for an author in Floyd County. And she's written a book called Going to Granny's. And the book itself is a story that is from her childhood, so it's something that she has experienced. I have a few finished examples of some pages here. So this is a finished page. It's just printed out. This is all done digitally. Even the penciling, everything is digital. And here's another page from the book. Now, how do you go from a story, just a written story, to a finished page of a book? How does that happen? Well, the first thing you do, of course, is you read the story, and I have it back in the back here. We have the story. So I'll read the story. And then after I read the story, what I'll do is I'll create a storyboard. And I have that here to show you too. A storyboard is a real simple sketch of what all the pages will look like. So it might be a little hard to see, but you see these look like stick figures. Real simple. Over on the side, I've placed notes to myself. So each one of these boxes you see is a page. So this is a page, this is page 5, 6, so on and so on. And what will happen is, I'll send this storyboard to the author or the publisher. They look it over and they say, I really like this one where they're looking down in the well, but can we take the bucket out? We need to move the bucket. We don't like the bucket. And so you make changes. This helps you to know where elements of the story are and what changes the publisher might request. After you've finished your storyboard and you know everything's where it needs to be and you don't have to worry about changes being made, then you start sketching out, I do at least, the pages on a piece of paper. So you'll sketch this out. Now this is page, as you can see, it follows along. This is actually page 2 of the book. And I'll sketch it out, and then I take this and I scan it into the computer, okay? And I will then start to work on the finished drawing. So I'll actually re-pencil it or digitally pencil it, and then I'll digitally color it. And that's what you have. You have the final product. So much planning goes into this. So look, you can see I've got examples here of all the different sketches that I've done. I may do sketches of the character, send this to the publisher. They make notes, what they like, take this away. The hair's different, fix the face, all sorts of things. Sometimes you get examples to be sent in. The publisher may say, I want this type of coloring, really light, loose looking, almost like crayon. All so much process. So here's another example. If it's based on a real story, you may get a picture of the sibling, and then you have to interpret that as a character into the story. So how do you go from this folder of planning to a finished book like this? So this is a book I just finished for an author in Glasgow, Kentucky, and she's actually written a book called A Kentucky Family Reunion. How do you go from planning to a finished story? And it's a lot of work. This is all done in watercolor as well, so you can see that watercolor is one of my favorite mediums for sure. And it ties in with today in a big way because thanks to Kevin, we have a really, really interesting question we're going to try to conquer today together. It's how do you paint feathers in watercolor? Now feathers, imagine a bird. There's thousands of feathers. It's incredibly difficult to do this, but the key is you don't think about it in terms of we have to paint every feather. The goal is to show the effect of there being feathers. It's like an illusion. It's not exactly a photographic representation of a bird, but you can look at it and say, that's a bird with feathers, and that's our goal. If we can accomplish that together today, we're great. So you at home, if you have watercolor, pull that out. If you don't have watercolor, you can still draw the first step with me, which is actually drawing the bird. So get a pencil, some paper, eraser, and let's get started. Now I want to talk a little bit about the different types of applications for watercolor. So you have the tubes of watercolor that you can use, which you squirt out, almost like paint or acrylic paint. That's kind of fun, but it can get messy. You need a palette, you need other things to work with it. You also have colored pencils, which are watercolor. So you could take these and sketch out whatever it is that you're wanting and then put water on top of it, and it actually acts as watercolor. So that's another option that we have. My favorite use of watercolor though are the blocks. So here is a small traveling kit. This is a kit with different cakes, we call them. We call them watercolor cakes. So both of these are actually traveling kits that I use. So in each one of these little tiny squares are different colors of watercolor. Over here in the palette is where I mix them. You have to mix watercolor too. The reason I have 2 sets is all of these are different colors. This is a really handy set if you really want to get into watercolor. I recommend looking into something like this. This is a travel kit. So you have a brush here that comes along with it. You pull out and you can actually use on the go. And there's a little reservoir here, a flask for water. So you can actually pick your water with you and your watercolors and you're set. All you need now is watercolor paper, right? With watercolor, we have to pay close attention to the color wheel. Now, the color wheel is a very important tool in art. This is actually a pocket color wheel, so you can take it on the go with you and turn this and you can see how different colors actually interact with one another. So you may have this blue-green, and you can see how the blue-green affects with the orange, how different types of colors offset each other. You have your primary colors, secondary colors, your tertiary colors, which these are the colors that are made by mixing adjacent colors together with the secondary color. So for instance, if you were to mix blue and you were to mix yellow together, you'll get a different color, right? You maybe get blue-green, or actually more probably green. So a good tool to have, and something we're going to need today to use a little bit, because we're going to be painting a bird. Now, feathers. Let's talk about feathers, and let's sketch it out as we talk. At home, what I want you to do is take your paper, and I have two pencils here. One is a red color, the other is a blue. And this is important because whenever I start to draw, I want to press down very lightly at first. So whatever I draw with the red, I want you to press down lightly with, okay? So let's start out by just drawing a circle. Doesn't have to be perfect. I hope you can see it. Maybe we can do it in blue. Press down very lightly, okay? Don't press down hard. You want to press down very lightly here. So you can see we have a circle. Now don't worry about it being a perfect circle. It does not have to be a perfect circle. All right, over here on the side of your circle, now doing towards the edge, we're going to be drawing a macaw, okay? A macaw is a parrot. So you're going to bring this line coming down like this right here and stopping, just like that. So see that? It almost looks like it's a balloon with a string on it, right? Now what we want to do is we want to sketch this out first so we have an idea of what our bird looks like. So you're going to bring this back up now, back up into the mouth part of the bird right here, just like that. So that's our beak. As you can see, it forms a beak, and that's what we want. We want that beak to look as if it's right here on the side of our circle. Now we need to draw the bottom portion of the beak. The mouth's going to be open just slightly, so you're going to sketch this part coming back up into the circle again, and this is where we get to actually seal this part off now. What I mean by that is you draw a line coming up and then down. So now we have a beak. This represents the top of the bird's head. So now we're going to come up to the back part of this circle, and we're going to keep going with this line now. So see how I'm bringing it down? I'm bringing the line down and forming the back part of the bird. This is the actual body of the bird. It's going to come down like this. So we have that now, all right? So come back over to the edge of your circle here, and you're going to draw this line coming up and down, and this will represent one of the wings of the bird, okay? Since we have all this ready to go, what we want to do is work on the eye. So you're going to come up into the middle of the circle, and you're going to draw another circle right here. This is the bird's eye. So as you can see, we have a design and outline of a bird. Now this looks nothing like what a bird looks like, because we're not finished yet, but we need to know and see kind of the general idea of the layout of what we're working with. So now we're going back into the drawing. This is where we're actually going to start to add more of a effect of the drawing, so the drawing actually stands out more and you can see what it is you're doing. For that, I need a pencil. So I'm going to grab another pencil. This is actually going to be a graphite pencil that we can use that will help us in order to see our lines. And in fact, to do one better, I think we'll use a pen. We'll just go ahead and use a pen for this. I want you to be able to see this at home. It's important that you can. All right, so I'm taking an ink pen now, and I'm going to draw over these lines so you can see where everything is. Now, I'm not drawing over every line. I'm only drawing over the lines I want to keep. Okay, so like, for instance, the circle part here underneath the beak, I don't want to keep that. I want to get rid of that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw just the lines I want to keep. So going up the bird's head, I want to keep this part of the circle. I don't want to keep the circle that goes down into the other portion of the head. I just want to keep this part. Okay, so we're getting rid of this part of the circle right here, right? And we're going to draw the wing now that comes up and down like this, and then the bottom part of the beak. All right, so now we have about everything we need before start watercoloring, except we need to go back in now and add a little detail. Where are we going to put the color? We need to know. So with my pencil, I'm going to sketch these lines, and I think you can be able to see them. They're just little hash marks all along the top here, down towards the eye, and back down towards the bottom part of the circle, just like this. Coming down. There we go. So I have these little hash marks. Now if you see a macaw, you know that they have a lot of lines going around their eye and around their head, so we want to be sure to draw some lines in there to represent that. Now we're getting to the part where we can actually do watercolor, but this is important. We have to know where we're going to put our color, so we need our pencil lines. We need these lines on here. Now I did not choose to draw the pencil lines with graphite, gray graphite, because I think the blue will be, you can hide that easier once we start putting watercolor down. So we have to put watercolor on top of this. So if you have a lot of lines that are really gray, that's going to stand out really bad. Up here's the bird's nostril right there, a small little circle that represents the nostril. Now going back down the wing, you notice that this looks nothing like feathers. It looks just like a straight part of the wing. So here we're going to actually start drawing these shapes that look like feathers. So what this is basically these triangle type designs. So kind of looks like maybe the end of a guitar pick. I use that as a reference a lot, but you can see what I mean by that. We're just drawing these lines that come down. You can see how we're going down the back, the same shape with this continuously. Now don't worry about messing up. You can't mess up. I follow Bob Ross's outlook where we think about mistakes as happy accidents in art. Okay, no one's going to judge your work and tell you that you can't draw because you can't make these shapes. That's not at all what we want to promote. We want to promote everybody getting involved, drawing together, having fun together, creating together. That's our goal. Now notice I'm making these shapes a little longer now as I'm going down the back of the wing. So the little tiny half guitar pick shapes up here, we're stretching them out now. We're going to stretch them out a little more because this is a wing that is bending, so it goes up and down. So that bend there actually causes the feathers to bunch up. So that's why these are sticking upward, and that's something we want. Now the feathers at the bottom of the wing are actually very long. So that's what we want to do now, is draw some of these very long feathers to represent the bottom part of the wing, okay? May throw in a couple more smaller ones here or there. This is a real random, chaotic type of application for these lines. It's not something that you sit down and be like, this line here. It's really sporadic, and it's something that you at home have to do on for yourself. You don't want to draw it exactly like mine, because then you're going to get really frustrated because mine is really chaotic, and yours has to be that way too. I'm pushing down a little hard, so my pencil's breaking a little bit here in the lead, but you can see how we're doing this though. Now on the back, the feathers are going to be shorter, so draw that little shape over and over and over again, going down the back. Now the question was how to paint watercolor feathers, and that's what we're getting to. But first, we have to draw out our drawing to see where we are. And notice I'm going over top of the black line that I've drawn a little bit here. I want to make these feathers sticking up just a little bit on the head. So I'm actually going to be changing that in a minute when I start watercoloring. This is going to take a different effect, okay? Now the eye is actually not finished all the way. We have to work with that just a little bit. And what we actually need to do, we need to put a little bit of detail inside that pupil. So you're going to go inside of this circle here, and you're going to draw another circle, just like this, right inside of that circle. And I want to put a little tiny circle right inside of the other circle to have an eye shine. So there we go. We have a macaw that is sketched out, and it's ready for color. Now let's go ahead and get started with our color. This is the fun part. This is the part that I enjoy the most. Now macaws come in different colors, but primarily what they are blue and red. We're going to be painting a blue macaw. So I have my paint ready, I have my water ready, and we're going to get started. So what you need to do is pull color into your brush. You don't want a lot of color, you just want to add a little bit at a time. The goal is to build it up. You don't want to go real heavy with your color at first. You want to go very lightly with your color. Notice I'm moving my brush back and forth as I take the color down. So I'm not really trying to paint inside of every little line that I've created. I'm just moving it back and forth, going all along the head here, okay? There's more color at the top. You have some yellow that comes off the top, and what I'm doing is I'm basically taking my brush and I'm flicking it backwards. Your stroke of your brush matters when it comes to feathers, because believe it or not, whatever position or orientation these little lines are going to affect the outcome of the look of your bird. Okay? So what I mean by that is when you go in to paint, take your brush and flip it back, just like this. Okay? Now all along the bird's head is this yellow. This yellow starts then to go into a different color. It actually starts to go into a green. So you're going to pull a little bit of green on your brush. Now what I like to do is I test it out down at the bottom so you can see a little bit of how it's going to look. So I'll pull that color, I'll mix it a little bit. I mix it right on the cake too, right inside of the watercolor. You got to be brave and bold when it comes to watercolor. Don't worry too much about if it's going to be the right look, because you can fix watercolor so easy. You can go in with watercolor, add a little more water to it, even right on the watercolor paper, and what happens is it actually fixes that and changes it for you. And you can see the greens start to have more of a representation here as I continue to put the pigment down, and it gets a little more green, a little more green, a little more green. And that's what we want. We want this transition from yellow to green to start to happen right here around the head. So you at home, if you have watercolor, be sure, and whenever you're making your brush strokes, don't try to paint every little small portion of your drawing, because you're going to continually add color and you'll fill up that space eventually. Leaving a little bit of white is a good thing. It actually helps you later on, because when you start to add the blue, you need some white space to put that in. So you can see how I'm just going over and over and over continually here. I want these brush strokes to go down towards the body. Now once you have all that you need when it comes to the yellow and the green, which you will add more later, there's no doubt, because once we start getting into the detail of the face, we'll do that. But now we're going to start to move into the blue. And continuously, always remember that you're moving very slowly into a color. You're not jumping into it really heavy, you're moving slowly. So I'm pulling some blue out. I want to test and see, is that the right blue? That's about right. We want to dilute it just a little bit. We don't want it to be that strong just yet. We're going to go back up in here now, and look, I'm flipping my brush. I'm flicking it, going downward. Notice how I'm not trying to paint over every little feather that I've drawn. I'm just going to keep pulling just a little bit of paint, a little bit of pigment, and I'm getting a little more detailed as I go. A little more detail. Blending that in is the key. And you can continually blend. Watercolor is so awesome because you can actually go back and you can add more color. Taking away color is a little hard, so you want to be sure you want to put the right color in there when you go to do it. But with feathers, you want to be sure and follow the shape of the feather. What I mean by that is if the feathers are pointing downward, when you go to apply the pigment, take your brush and follow the direction of those feathers. We'll get a little more darker here in a minute, but notice how I'm going outside of the line. I'm actually going outside of the line that I've drawn. And as you're getting back down into the feathers here, look what I'm doing. I'm going and I'm painting the shape of what I've drawn. This is where that comes in to be very important. So if you've drawn these feathers out, you want to follow those shapes. And this could take a while. You can really get into the detail of something, and it could take forever to really pull out. Notice what I'm doing though. I'm going over top of the shapes I've drawn. Those little tiny half guitar pick type shapes. I'm going over top of them, each one of them. And I'm wanting that color to be the outline of each one. This is a darker blue. This is a blue that's a little heavy. And what I mean by that is the pigment is very dark. And it's going to stand out a whole lot at first. It's going to look as if, we're not really getting the effect that we want. But what happens is, when a minute here, I'm going to go back in and I'm actually going to put a lighter color blue inside of this shapes that I'm drawing. And that should give us the effect that we want. Feathers are very hard, and like I said at the beginning, you do not want to try to make them look photorealistic. Just by a flick of the brush, you get an effect that you want. I'm making those shapes continually down. You at home can get any type of watercolor set that works for you with your budget or with your interest in art. If you want to go all out, you can really invest a lot into watercolor. But if you want to do it as a hobby, there's tons of options for you to get involved. There's even Crayola sets, which are really, really basic sets of watercolor. I'm sure everybody knows and have seen those. Those sets are available pretty much anywhere you go. So now I've pretty much outlined the feathers that I want to keep, right? So these are all outlined. Now what the goal is to go back in with a lighter color blue, and this is where we start to add the effect to our feathers. We get the actual full color of our feathers here in a second. I'm going outside of my line still, all down through here, right? All right, so pull a little more blue, got a few more feathers at the bottom to work on. Now, remember, flicking your brush is important, and making sure that those lines are detailed is just as important as well. So now we're going to use a little bit of a different color blue. This should be a little lighter. There we go. Now I'm going inside of those shapes now. This is where you really start to pull that color out. The dark outline of the feather helps to be able to show that there's shadow underneath what it is you're drawing. Notice how I'm leaving some white as I go. I don't want the entire canvas to be, or paper to be covered. And leaving that white, like I said, helps you, like right now, going back in and adding a little more detail to certain areas. If you leave white, your pigment has a place to go. So now we're going to color over top of these. And you can see how the darker watercolor underneath, where I've drawn the outline, starts to actually give the effect of their shadow in there. So really it's about adding the colors in a certain order to get the effect that you want with feathers. You want to be able to show the direction the feathers are going. At the same time though, you want to show shadow, you want to show the colors. So this macaw is definitely blue, and that's good, that's what we want. We want the blue color to pull out, but we want to also show that there's feathers here, there's shadow, there's lines, there's something that represents the shapes of those feathers. So what we'll do is we'll speed paint through this, and remember to use this technique of flipping your brush in the beginning, and once you get the outline, take a lighter color blue, you may have to add some white, and go back over it. So let's go ahead now and let's speed paint through our feathers. All right, everyone. So I think that we've accomplished the look of a feather. Now, of course, interpretation with different people, it's different. Some may say they want very good detail, and others might say, well, I'm happy with being able to see it and tell it without it being so detailed. So I think we've done a good job. I'd love to see yours today. Now, that's what I'm really interested in, is to see your drawing. You didn't have to do the full watercolor, that's fine. But, if you were to have drawn along with us today, sketched out the parrot, please send that to me. We will share it here on the show. We'd love to do that. And it's eplingillustrations@gmail.com. Be sure to leave your name and where you're from, what area you're from. Really appreciate today Kevin sending his question in to spawn the entire show. Your involvement is everything for us here on Pike TV and the Art Workshop. So we'd love to see more of that. So if you have any art or any questions, be sure and send those in. And just remember, art is supposed to be fun. Have a good time with it. Everyone's work is different, and that's the beauty of art. So we really appreciate your viewership. Hope you all are doing well and drawing and having a great time this summer. So until next time, I'm Christopher Epling for the Art Workshop and Pike TV. And remember, keep drawing.